Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are excited because we have a special guest tonight in our strategy of networking webinar. Our special speaker is Carlos Chalico. And well, Carlos is a very well-known member of our Hispanic and Latin American community. He is also a very good friend. He has been involved in many causes and many different kind of events related to our community. And let me tell you a little bit about his bio. Carlos is a cybersecurity and privacy professional. He started his career with EY in Mexico in 1996 in Mexico City. And today, he's an associate partner for EY in Toronto and is one of the national leaders of cybersecurity and privacy. Is his expertise. His experience includes assisting clients in Latin America, USA, Europe, and Canada. In addition to being part of this company, EY, he's an instructor on cybersecurity matters for the University of Toronto School of Continuous Studies. Carlo is also an active volunteer for Hispanotech, Alpha, ISACA, and IAP. Welcome, Carlos. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's very exciting to be here today, and I think the topic that we are going to be discussing today is very close to my heart. So let me share a deck that will be just driving the conversation. And I want to make of this something that is very interactive. So I will be just facilitating the discussion, but I would love to start receiving questions and comments from you. So as it was explained before, if you want to say anything, please feel free to use the chat section. I am already seeing that we have many hellos here. So hello to everyone. And please feel free to start sharing questions over here if you have any. You will see that my face will be moving from this place to this place because I have you here, but my chat box is here, so I will be moving my head to two places. Let me just ask to the production team, is it better if I share my screen with a presentation? Is that something I can do? Because if not, I think I will turn you crazy with the clicks. Let me just start presenting. I saw that I have enabled share screen for me. So let me just start sharing my screen. Can you see my screen now? Any yes or a thumbs up to confirm? Perfect, thank you. So we are going to be talking today about networking. And I thought that it was good to start the conversation by defining some concepts that I think are fundamental to talk about networking. And before going there, just to talk, I think just briefly about myself. You already know that I was born and raised in Mexico. I have been many years in the cybersecurity space, have collected some designations on that. Yvette has already shared, and thank you so much for the very nice intro, Yvette, that I work for EY since 1996 with a pause of 5 years over there, member of different organizations, teach for the University of Toronto, as you already know. And something I think that wasn't shared is that I do creative writing. And perhaps the most significant accomplishment that I have made on that field is that one of my texts was published on that book that you can see on the screen right now, Nostalgia Bajo Cero, which is a compendium of many short stories from different writers that attended a course of Spanish creative writing or creative writing in Spanish from the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. And I also love riding my bike, and that's something I do mainly in summer. I am still not brave enough to do that in winter or even in fall, I have to say. So what is a network? The topic for today is networking. So the first question that came to my mind when I was thinking of delivering this session is, what is a network? Is there anyone who wants to share something about the definition of a network on the chat, or maybe if you want to open your mics as well, whatever you prefer? Anyone? Don't be shy.
Yes.
Please.
The participants can share thoughts about network in the chat, please.
Thank you, Beth. So please, to all our participants, don't be shy and let us know what you think a network is on the chat box. Connecting, I see it's a group of persons with something in common. Yes. Network is about connections. Yes. Thank you, Cristel, Jose, Andrea. That's the point, and that's precisely where we are going to be heading to. So if we think of a network is, based on the English Oxford Dictionary, is an arrangement of intersecting horizontal and vertical lines. I thought that that definition was a little bit subjective, so I went for more. And also as a noun, we can think of a network as a group or system of interconnected people or things, like a trade network, which I think is more in line with what we want to discuss today. So in that same line, as a verb, what do you think networking is? I saw another comment. Connect with others, being you with your colleague, and make a system that connects you. Anyone else? Creating relations. Thank you. So again, from the same source, the Oxford English Dictionary, we can have this interaction with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. So that's the, I will say, definition of a network coming from a dictionary. Collaborative work from Jose Figueroa. Thank you, Jose. Let me start jumping into some definitions that are more based in my experience and on what I have collected. When it comes to networks, we can think of different types of networks, and we will be exploring today 3 types of networks. The first one is the one I call your support network. That can be your immediate family or the people that is closest to you. So in my case, for example, what you are seeing on the screen is a representation of myself with my support network, including my dog now. So the support network is the one that is closest to you, the one that is going to be giving you that support. That's why I call it support network, that foundations you need in order to be able to make it on whatever you want to do. We have another type of network that is also very important, is very relevant, and this is the social network. This is a network you will be using to go out for a party or to have a good time on things that are not professional necessarily, but that will help you be engaged with the community that you're trying to be part of. And we can also think of the professional network. This professional network is the one that is associated to the discipline or the field you work in, and that can help you identify the opportunities and the businesses that you are pursuing. Now, of course, these 3 networks can intersect, and we can have members of your support network being part of your professional network or being part of your social network. And those gems that we can have on those intersections can be perhaps the most important elements of our networks, the ones that will help us transition from one to the other, or will help us be effective on the different spaces that we will be having. It is very important to have the 3 of them. It is pretty important to have components on the 3 of them so that we can be properly supported and we can be properly equipped to go outside and do whatever we want to do. And this is, of course, something that will be very useful when we are going through a migration process or changing countries like many of us did and coming to Canada. But this can also work on our home countries, because in the end, interacting with people and having these human conversations and looking for empathy to achieve the goals that we want to achieve is always going to be crucial. So support, social, and professional. Um, how is it that we can build our own network? That's something that we are going to be seeing in a second. But before going there, is there any question, comment, thought related to these 3 types of networks and the intersection we have between the 3 of them? Anyone? All doing well? Okay, if anyone happens to have a comment or question, just please feel free to drop it on the chat section or the chat box. So how is it that I can build my network? I have identified 4 different steps that we need to go through when it comes to building our own network. The stage of defining the network, that's number 1. The one devoted to creation of the network, that's number 2. Then cleaning the network, that's number 3. And then number 4, maintaining the network. Now, let's go through each one of them. And this is something that I see focused to every type of network from the 3 that we identified, but I think it's going to be easier to identify how to use or follow these 4 different steps for the social and the professional networks. So let's go to the definition. And I see a comment from Yvette on the chat box. The network works because we are social. And yes, that's true. We are social by nature, and we need that to work in order for us to be, I will not only say successful, but in order for us to be. I remember the case of a friend of mine. He's based in Toronto, and he moved to Vancouver. And when he went to Vancouver, he had a very good relationship with his colleagues at the company he was working for, but it was very hard for him to find a way to get connected to the community in Vancouver. So the only network he had, in addition to his support network, that was his own family, he also had a piece of the professional network that was integrated by the people within his company. But again, he wasn't able to connect socially to other people. And he got tired of just having the same professional network playing the role of social and extending itself to cover some other pieces within the professional space that he wasn't able to cover. So he was in Vancouver for less than 6 months, I think, and he moved back to Toronto. The lack of definition of these 3 full components of the networks, or 3 types of the networks that we were analyzing, just prevented him from being successful, and he decided to go back. What I think we need to do when we are defining these networks, I think that the first step we need to take is to identify the value you expect. What is it that you need to get from that network? What is it that you are looking for from that network? I remember when I came to Canada back in 2012, I was very fortunate because there's a small Canadian consulting company that was interestingly, recently acquired by Deloitte, and at the time was completely independent. The name was West Business Solutions. They had operations in the West Coast, Vancouver, and a little bit on Alberta, and they were expanding to the East Coast, and they wanted someone to help them expand their footprint into basically Toronto and Montreal, and that was my role. So I started assembling a team, building a team of SAP consultants to expand the operations of this consulting company into Toronto and Montreal. And I started trying to sell professional services to different companies. And it was very hard. I was the new company, the new immigrant, speaking a language with a lovely Latino accent. So there were different things that were not playing on my favor. So I was thinking, what is it that I can do? I mean, how can I be effective? Because I am being rejected in many, many cases and in many opportunities. And there's very few people that is willing to have a conversation with me, not even talk about selling something. I was having issues on just having someone to pick up the phone or reply to an email that I was sending. So I said, what is it that I need? I need connections, I need introductions, and I need to find someone to help me. So the value I expect, the value I need is people within the IT, specifically the SAP community that can help me get connected to the people I want to go to in order to offer the services I am trying to offer. So the value I was expecting, was that connectivity. And then I said, well, in order for that connectivity to come, I need to find someone I can have something to talk about. So I need to find what I call commonalities. I need to have someone who has something in common with me to be able to start the conversation. So I thought that the most relevant, the strongest commonalities that I should look for, because those were skills that I could use for having that conversation, were my cybersecurity slash privacy knowledge or my Latinity. So I made a bet on the second one. And I said, I will look for Latin American people in the companies I am interested in approaching. So I started identifying companies all across Toronto and Montreal, the companies I wanted to target. And I was paying attention to companies that were using SAP because this was an SAP consulting company, and that were attractive enough for me. So after identifying the companies, after identifying the targets, then I looked for people through LinkedIn that had Latin American background, just paying attention to the names, just by looking at the names and last names and scanning the experience they had and the universities they went to. I identified people from Peru, from Colombia, from Mexico, from Brazil, from Argentina, from Chile, you name it, different Latin American countries. And I started digitally knocking at the door. That was basically using LinkedIn to approach them. And my message was, hey, I am Mexican and I just came to the country and I am leading the development of this SAP professional services company. And I would love to find a way to identify the right person to talk to at your company. Is this something you can help me with? I would love to have a chance to have a conversation with you and learn a little bit more on what you do and talk about that and hopefully about something I can offer. And it was incredible. It was amazing to see how many responses I started to get. Of course, there was people that didn't respond, and there were some that said, no, thank you, I am not interested in these. But there were many who said yes. And even I have to say that that was a way for me to meet some of the people that I am a very good friend with now at Hispanotech. It was one of the vehicles I used for that. So it worked. So having identified the value of connectivity I was looking for and using this commonality I had already identified, I started opening the doors that I had to open or that I wanted to open. Now, the third element that was very important is, as well, and that we will be using in the future was understanding what I could offer in return. Of course, many of these individuals I approached were interested in talking to me, but I needed to find something to give them in return. And it was in many cases something that went beyond the professional services I was offering. So I needed to pay attention to the multiple conversations I was having to see how else I could be helping those individuals. Maybe through connections, maybe by sharing advice on privacy and security for free, just as a gracious act in order to correspond to the gentle response that they were having with me. And just like that, I was trying to identify what would be useful for those individuals that were saying yes to my request for help. So that was the definition. I started building a map of the multiple organizations I could approach, the Latin American individuals I identified, and how I could be getting their support in order to get what I was expecting. That was the definition of my professional network when I just came to the country. And that's what I mean by defining the network. What is it that you want to achieve? In my case, for example, as I said before, I was looking for connectivity through Latin American people in order to offer my professional services. But each one of us can have a different goal. So depending on the goal we have, we need to identify the value we expect to get from the network, look for commonalities that we can have with other network members to start the conversation, and then understand what we could offer in return to their attention. So that's the first stage definition. Any comments or thoughts on this? All good? Perfect. I got an all good. If anyone has a joke as well, that's more than welcome. That will be more than welcome. So first stage, definition or define. Second one, creation or create. Once you have identified these value that you will get, and once you have identified those commonalities, you need to identify the communities of value that you will be approaching. And as I explained before, when I came to the country for my professional network building, I thought of SAP related companies. And then I said, I need to think of SAP related organizations. And I started looking for SAP related organizations. And that's how I found one that is called ASO, America's SAP Users Group. And then I said, you know what? I think this group is fine. And the companies I have identified are fine, but I want to expand my network. So what about looking for the associations that are international and I was a member of when I was in Mexico? And that's how I started approaching organizations like ISACA and ISC Squared, and that was good. But then I said, from the professional perspective, I think that those organizations are good. But what about the social network? What about the social component? I think I need to find Latin American groups, Latin American communities that I can approach to expand my social network as well. And I did so. So I started just Googling Latin American associations in Toronto, and I started finding many. And I was looking for organizations, as I said before, connected to cybersecurity or privacy, which is what I do, or SAP in that time, or Latin American. And interestingly, one that was combining the two elements I was looking for, the IT related piece with the Latin American piece, was Hispanotech. So Hispanotech was one of the first networks I joined. And I became a member. It was free. It is still free. And I started finding some other organizations through Hispanotech. So identifying those communities of value is something that can be tremendously useful. Then the next step you can do is zoom in on specific targets. And what I mean by that is that once you identify the community, you can identify members within this community that can be the specific allies you want to go to, because they will be able to help you get the value you expect from that specific network. And I remember, to give you a very simple example, when I came to Canada and I identified ISACA as a community of value for my purposes, I just went to the website to identify when ISACA Toronto was having a get together. I came to Toronto in November, to Canada in November, and I found out that in December, the very next month, they were having a social event. So I went to the social event. I just pop in or pop up at the social event. I just went. And as I went to the social event, I spent some time just trying to identify the guys that were like members of the board of this organization. And my way to identify them was to see who was the busiest, saying the more hellos in the room. And that's how I identified one guy that, in addition to being that social and that connected to different persons, he had a plaque with his name, and it said Isaka Education Director. So at some point, I remember, I remember.
I think we lost Carlos. Oh, Carlos, you are back.
Thank you.
Can
Can
you
you
hear
hear me
us?
now?
Yes.
I can
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can. Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, and you cannot see my screen anymore, right?
Not at this moment.
Okay, don't worry. I will bring that. Did you hear when I was sharing with you that Isaka story?
Yeah, that the person with the label. And
Exactly.
it
He
was
has his name. He had his name tag on the jacket, and I approached him. And let me just try to share my screen with you. Give me 1 second.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Yeah. So I stopped the guy, and I said, "Hey, hello. I am coming from Mexico City, and I was a volunteer in Mexico City, and I would love to become a volunteer here in Toronto. So what is it that I can do?" And he asked me a couple of questions about what I did and how long I have been a member with Isaac, and I replied to both. And then he said to me, "You know what? It would be great to put you in touch with the chapter's president." So he put me in front of the chapter's president, and I started talking to this gentleman. He was a partner with Deloitte at the time. He just got retired last year, and it was a great conversation, and he ended up accepting me as a volunteer, and I started working for Isaka. A little bit later, I started doing the same for other associations, and I started supporting Hispanotech in different capacities. But what I want to say is we need to identify those communities, then we need to identify those targets, like this guy I found at this event. And once you identify the target, then the next step is to do your move. And in this case, my move was to just stop him and stand in front of him and say, "I want to be a volunteer." I did that because I was there in person, and that triggered what I wanted to have from them, and I ended up being part of that community. So the next step, once you do your move, is to understand your credit and how to use it. What do I mean by that? I have been explaining more than once when I have to talk about networks that thinking of your networks is like thinking of a bank account. You cannot make a withdrawal without making a deposit. And it's the same thing with emotions and relationships in general. If you just ask and ask and ask and ask for something, at some point, the other part will get tired of just giving and giving and giving and giving. You are supposed to be in a relationship because you are receiving and getting, yes, but giving as well. Both of the individuals, both of the parties are offering value to that relationship you have. That's what I call a credit. It's just to make that like an analogy with a bank account. You can make again a deposit or a withdrawal, and you can understand what you can get from these relationships you are going to be getting from this association, and you can understand how is it that you will use it. For example, in the case of that organization, or it can be the same with Hispanotech, I understood that there was many talented people that were already member of the organization, and I could approach them and ask them questions, and I could use different vehicles in order for that to happen. So that was the credit I could use, and that's how I could use it. So the next step is to use that credit. And I call it a credit because you will have to pay later. If you want your network to be successful, you need to find a way to give back to the same network in order to keep that active. So that's what I mean when I say identify the credit you have, because that's what you will be able to use, and use that credit. So that's the second stage that I have created for this walk through the definition of a strategy for your network. We have already gone through the definition. The second stage is the creation. The third stage is the cleaning. What do I mean by cleaning? When I came to Canada, I remember that I was in a mode from the networking perspective that I have always qualified or called promiscuous. And when I say promiscuous, what I mean is that I was open to having a conversation with anyone, but just like that, anyone. I remember I stopped and talked to the policeman at the TTC subway station, and I was talking to, I don't know, anyone in the line of the bus with me, and that's still my style. But I was more open at the time doing that and having as many conversations as possible. And as incredible as it sounds, just having one of those many conversations, I got one of the jobs I had in my time in Canada. And just having one of those many conversations, I ended up teaching at the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. So it was good, it was useful. But then as I had these positive connections that were very useful for me, I also had some non that positive connections. And even some of them were, I will say, toxic. I remember meeting a young guy at a mining conference, and we had a very nice conversation. I really liked the conversation I had with that guy. So we agreed on getting together for lunch some day later. And then we went for that lunch. He was Mexican, I was Mexican. So we, of course, went to a Mexican restaurant. And I remember that as we were having a conversation, he started complaining about everything: the weather, the complications on getting a job, how bad the coffee at Tim Hortons was, how bad the subway was, how bad being close to the lake was. Everything was bad for this guy. And I said, that's insane. I mean, I had a very positive conversation with him at the mining conference. And now that I am here with him in a more relaxed environment, he's just complaining about everything. So it was inevitable for me to ask him, what are you doing here? I mean, if it is that bad, what are you doing here? What's the point of you being in Canada if you feel that the country is doing these bad things for you? And he said, I don't know. And I said to myself, well, I don't know what I am doing here either. So that was the last time I saw this individual. So when that happened, it was like the bottom of the situation. I said, I have had a lot of fun in this promiscuous mode for networking purposes, but I think I need to start cleaning out my network. I need to identify from those multiple contacts I have made, from those multiple associations I have made, I need to identify which are the ones that are good for my support, my social interactions, or my professional development. So that's why I am illustrating this with these exercise figurines because the intention is to make your network lean by removing the fat that you don't need so that you can have only those elements that are relevant for you and that will be crucial for you on the social perspective, on the professional perspective, on the support perspective, or on the three of them. That's what I think you need to do on the cleaning stage. Thank you for the comment. Life is short. You don't want to waste time with people who mess up their own life. I totally agree. So that's why I think that with time you need to start becoming selective. And I have to say that that goes for organizations as well. I remember that through Meetup, this platform that we have that can help you identify different groups that you have out there, I identified many IT related groups that I started approaching. Well, many of them were completely useless for me. So I started staying away from them. And sadly, as I said before, I found people that was not the type of person I was looking for. I said, I just came to the country and I have something in mind and I have plans for me and my loved ones and my friends. I don't want someone injecting in my head ideas that will deviate me from the objective I have. So I want to stay away from them. So that's what cleaning means. That means identifying, again, based on what you defined, and based on the creation of your network, you need to identify what are those specific individuals that you need to approach or that you want close to you. Even I have to say, you can identify a very solid association that you want to be a part of because the community in general is great, but there may be some members, some actors within this group that you want to stay away from because they are not adding value to what you are doing. And in the end, as I said before, as it happens in any relationship, you need to identify the credit you can use because you will have to pay. And that's what is going to take me to the next stage of that cycle that I defined, because I see that as a cycle. And this is the maintenance cycle. And this is when it comes for you to give back. You got a lot from your network. You need to give back to that network if you expect that network to be there for you when you need that. I will go to perhaps one of the most important activities where we expect to have the support from our network. And that's when we are looking for a job. I have seen many cases where someone is looking for a job, and then at the moment when this individual is looking for a job, this individual starts looking for his or her contacts, just talking to them about this interest that they have on getting a new job and how they want to identify a new opportunity. And they have people helping them. And as soon as they have that job, they vanish. They are simply gone. They are invisible. And then when they have another need, perhaps changing jobs, they come back to the network to try to get the same. Contacts change, interest changes, life happens. So chances are that you will not be identifying the contacts you identified before. So that's why the maintenance of the network is relevant. And the beauty of that is that as you are maintaining that network, you may be working on your professional network and talking to your professional contacts and seeing them and just sharing ideas with them and exchanging thoughts. And you start to identify that many of the members of your professional network are naturally moving to your social network. And then some of them will be part of your support network. And that's the beauty of the maintenance of the network, how you can move actors or components from these multiple networks you have from one to the other. And that's something that you need to keep alive if you need to have that network properly supporting you. And when I am talking about support, I am not only thinking or talking about how the network is going to help you achieve or accomplish something like getting a job. It's even emotional support. And when we make this transition to come from whichever country you are migrating from, like in my case, from Mexico, to this wonderful country, yes, it is great. It is not perfect, but it is great. But doing this on your own is very tough. And that's the role of the network to help you go through and overcome those multiple challenges in the professional sphere, in the social sphere, and in your more intimate sphere. So that's why you need to create this network. So thinking of maintenance is something that you need to have in mind all the time. And the last element that is not even considered as part of the components, but that I think is crucial as well, is do not stop. As I said before, keeping the network alive is going to be fundamental for you in order to get from this network the value you need and to be able to give back to this network. This is a work that will always need to be there so that you can keep these connections alive. When I migrated from Mexico to Canada, I didn't kill my network in Mexico. And the way I think of that is that instead of just ending that network or ending that stage of my life, I am expanding my sphere of influence. Now I am capable of talking to people in Mexico for business purposes or for social purposes. And of course, there's many people in my intimate support network in Mexico, but I have expanded that to Canada as well. And now I have actors within each one of these three networks that are part of the Canadian family that I have created. So that's why it is important to avoid stopping. This is something that we need to go and maintain constantly so that the network can effectively help us with. And I expect that I have provided you with some ideas on how to define a network, how to strategize, how to build this network for you, and how to identify the value you can get from this network and how you can give back to the network. What I would love to do now, if you're okay with that, is to open the floor or to open the chat for questions. So if there's anyone with questions, I will stop. Well, I will leave this on the screen so that you can see my email address. If anyone wants to extend the conversation, that's my email address. It can take some time for me to respond, but I will respond. You can find me on Twitter as well and LinkedIn. Frankly, well, I have to say X instead of Twitter. My activity on X has been significantly reduced, and the one that I use the most right now is LinkedIn. I have to say that I did the same exercise on my digital life and my social networks. And I started to identify the value I was getting from Facebook or from Instagram or from X. And I ended up realizing that the one that is really giving me what I need now and what I expect now is LinkedIn. So that's why that's the network that I am using the most right now. I have not abandoned the other two or the other three, Facebook, X, and Instagram, but my activity is very limited on those three. And where I focus my energy, because I think that's where I am getting the value that I am looking for, is LinkedIn. So questions, thoughts, complaints as well, they are valid too. Jokes.
Thank you, Carlos. Yes, we are waiting for our participants to write down their questions or experiences, even comments, thoughts, etc. And
Yeah, no,
well,
that's cool. Thank you, Yvette.
and Luisa and Ofelia, they say that your presentation was excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
useful information. And Sandra is asking, could you repeat your phrase?
Oh, that's a good question. Which phrase?
What phrase, Sandra? Can you elaborate there?
Do you have any context on that so that I can have?
She said, thank you. Could you repeat your phrase? Probably the last one was the last one about
the funds or the exchange in the foundings.
Okay, so maybe is what I said. The idea I had on making a deposit in order to make a withdrawal from your network. I mean, you need to be maintaining that network, and that means giving to your network so that you can get from the network. Was that it, Sandra?
Right.
Thank you. And something that is amazing. I think I shared with you that I teach for the University of Toronto, and I am saying this while we start having more questions. And I remember that in my almost 9 years teaching for the University of Toronto, every single term, and I teach 4 times per year, every time is called a term or a semester. It's actually a trimester. The university sends an evaluation form to the students so that they can evaluate the course and the instructors. And I have always had, I will say, good comments. Many positive comments, some comments that say what we are not doing right. And we really read them and take them into consideration in order to do whatever we need to do to improve the class for the next cohort, if we cannot do that for the current cohort. But I remember that once I got a comment that said, I have found annoying to get Carlos's accent for 3 hours every week. And I think the university should be doing something on this regard. And I said, that's interesting. And I understand that. I don't happen to be someone that will be liked by everyone. That's something I get. But I think this message is going beyond that. So I sent a message to the university and I said, guys, I got this, and I really want to know what you think of this, because I think this is going beyond just a comment, and I am finding it disrespectful. And to call it by its name, I think I am finding it racist. I understand that I do have an accent, and my intention is not to change that. That's my accent. So I just want to understand what is it that you think. And they said, Carlos, you have our full support. We think that this is not acceptable. And unfortunately, we cannot know who sent this because of how the systems are configured. This is completely anonymous, but you have our full support. So I went to the next class, and in the class I said, hey, just to let you know, I got all your comments. All the feedback is welcome, and we always try to have an objective look at it and identify what is it that we can do in order to improve our classes and benefit the current cohort and future cohorts. But I have to tell you that there are things that I can do and some other things that we can't do. And among the things that we can't do is to change my accent. There was a comment that came regarding my accent, and that's something I cannot change, and it will not change. I am Mexican. I never lied on that. And that's why you have this lovely Latino accent. There's no way to change it. You had until class number 3 to drop this course, and you would be fully refunded for that. This is class 7. So if we are discussing this in class 7, I'm sorry if you don't like my accent, but I think that you are getting some value because you have stayed until this point. So what I want to say is, I hope you enjoy the rest. My accent will not change, but I think the content is attractive. If there's any additional comment, please let me know. So I replied to that, just showing how little I cared about the comment, because I genuinely cared nothing about the comment. I have to say, in parentheses, that if that comment had come to me in my first or second year teaching, it might have been devastating. But at this point, after almost 10 years in Canada, and at the point where I think I have gained the confidence I need to do this and many other things, I don't care. I recognize my accent. I am proudly Latin American, and I have no issues in showing that. But what I want to say on this networking piece is that this last Saturday, I went to a volunteering activity to clean a park. And coincidentally, at this same event was one of my former students. And when she heard my name, she approached me and she said, Carlos, it is great to meet you in person. I am. And she said her name, and I couldn't remember the name. And she said, I was your student. And I said, oh, that's great. Well, thank you for coming today. And she said, well, in addition to that, I want to thank you for that comment you made when you got that feedback. And I said, that feedback? Oh, that feedback, the one on the accent? And she said, yes, because I found it very useful. And since then, I thought that you were speaking not only for yourself, but for many others that were in the room that didn't speak English as their first language. And what I want to say is that I would love to continue the conversation with you. I need some assistance on this and some mentoring on that and some connections on it and some connections on that. And by the way, I am working for a consulting firm. I have my own consulting firm, and I have a business opportunity that I think can be attractive for you. And that just came from something I did as an instructor for the University of Toronto. So again, just thinking what is it that you can give to your networks and how you can get that value from that network is something that is very useful. Let me just go. I can see some
Yes,
comments.
we have some questions.
That's
I
cool.
have
Yeah, let
one
me go to
from,
that.
yes, from, let's see, well, great presentation. Xiu Yan, I hope talking about pronunciation, and Xiu Yan, she is asking, how do you maintain your network? Do you talk to them or invite them to dinner, lunch, giving away gift cards? I'm not sure how can I return to my mentors' networks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Yvette and Shujan. I think that just being there for them, there will be different ways to be close to your network members, and you need to find a way to know them. It is, of course, impossible to give back to everyone within your network because it can be massive with time, but you can identify the actors that are relevant for you and identify how is it that you can be close to them. And I am sure that if you do something for them, it's because you enjoy being with them. So the way I do that is that I am constantly in touch with them. And that's why I am a member and a volunteer and connected to different organizations and different actors, because I love being part of that. And I love identifying how is it that I can give back to my network. Yes, we get together many times for dinner. Yes, we get together many times for lunch. Yes, we get together many times for coffee. And sometimes it's just a phone call. So how are you? How's everything going? Is there anything you need? I'm doing well. Things are going well. Maybe this is not going that well, but I just wanted to say hi and find out how is it that you are. So just doing that. And again, as I said before, finding how is it that you can be better connected to all of them is going to be helping you find a response for this. I hope that I am responding to that.
And a similar question from Andrea Pardo. What do you suggest to maintain your network? What kind of activities?
That's a good question. That will depend on the network we are talking about. If that's the social network, I think that just getting a good excuse for going out and partying, that's cool. Maybe getting together for a beer or for a coffee or having lunch or dinner together, that can be as simple as that. On the professional side, I think that being part of very well respected and positioned organizations like Hispanotech can be pretty useful. As I said before, I'm always very happy on coming to these events. And I have to say that I love more doing this in person. But I love coming to these events and seeing the faces of people I know and seeing the faces of people that is just trying to make it into the country. So just having this interaction, it's very useful. Again, when I came to the country, I identified many organizations that I thought would be useful for me. Now I have become much more selective, and there's just a few organizations that I am close to in different capacities. In some of them, I am constantly helping and volunteering, like Hispanotech. In some others, I am a member of the board. In some others, I just show up in some specific events. In some others, I just pay attention to what they are doing, depending on what I think I can offer and what I think I can get from those organizations.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. And from Alejandro Santa Cruz, any advice on how to manage work-life balance and networking at the same time? He has a full-time job. Sometimes he feels a little bit burnt out. What would you recommend? It's a good question.
It is. And that's a question I think I get many, many times because of the different things I do. What I have found is to have my attention fixed in those communities that I think can offer value to me and I can give value to. And around those, I start creating my own ecosystem. For example, as I said before, I am a cybersecurity and privacy professional. So the two associations that are the most well respected on those fields globally are ISACA and the IAPP. Well, I became a member of the board for those two. There's another one that is called ISC Squared. I am not a member there. I mean, a member of the board, but I am a member with them. Another organization that is very close to my heart because it was one of the very first I found when I came to Canada is Hispanotech. So what I do is that I start connecting these multiple communities. So right now, for example, in the role I have with ISACA, I found a way for ISACA to support Hispanotech. I work for EY, and I said I want EY supporting Hispanotech and ISACA because the two of them are important for me. So I start connecting all of the different components I have, and with that, the maintenance of the social network I have created happens, at least on the professional side, in a very natural way and in a very smooth way. We have events together, we support each other, and we see each other very often because of that. So I think that when you identify the value that these multiple organizations offer and you start connecting them all together so that you can have a tissue that can make it easier for you to make this maintenance, is going to be easier. I hope that I am not being confusing on that response.
No, I think you found a way to save time, right? And to manage this balance, like creating this ecosystem of different organizations and somehow get together and somehow attend the same kind of events. So you are like in one event, you are saying hello to different network components, right?
Yeah, and something I forgot, Yvette, but I think is very important. You need to set boundaries. And these boundaries have to be clear. I personally need time for myself. And I have to say that during the week, it's very complicated for me to find that time for myself. I do because I have to sleep, and from time to time I have to eat and go to the washroom as well. So those are activities that I do by myself. But what I don't do, for example, is to use my personal time for work over weekends. It is pretty interesting because it is common over weekends to just see me vanish. It comes Friday and I can be partying very hard at an event, but comes Saturday and I vanish and I will reappear on Monday. That's something I have done since a long time ago because I try to keep that boundaries. And something that was very hard for me to do, but I have started to do that is to do the same when I go on vacation. In the past, I used to be close to my cell phone, just paying attention to calls from work or whatever. But now I say, guys, I will be gone. And I mean it. I will be gone. So please, if anyone needs anything before I go, let me know because I will vanish after that and I will reappear in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever I will be taking off. But I think that setting those boundaries is important as well.
And a key question from Cristel Ortega is about LinkedIn, maintaining your network on LinkedIn. Can you share some tips of maintaining the networks once you take the first step and, for example, go out for a coffee, talk with someone you message on LinkedIn?
I would say yes, and again, I think that LinkedIn is just one more channel, but it is one that is a little bit more demanding in terms of maintenance. If you want to be visible in the network, of course you can have these one-to-one conversation with the many actors that you will be interacting with. It is useful, and I think it is always nice to send a thank you note after you have a conversation with someone. And it can be through LinkedIn or any other channel. But if we focus our attention on LinkedIn, I think that in addition to these individual interactions you may have with people, something that is very important as well is to start sharing content and to make yourself visible by sharing content on the things you know and the things you do and how you are giving back to that community that you're trying to build or that you have already built. I think that's how we can use the network. Am I responding to that?
Yes, thank you. And also from Fariba, that's a key question as well. She says that sometimes she can find much in common or how to interact. Oh, we lost. Oh, are you still there?
I am here,
We
yes.
exactly. So Fariba, she found out that there is not much in common with the person or the networking she met and how she could interact with them. Uh, and because she thinks that she's not providing something to them,
I
right?
think,
So what would be your
yeah,
suggestion?
I think that in order to be effective in these interactions with networks, something I have found very useful is the rule of two. And that may be very Star Wars for the Star Wars fans that may be in the room, like myself. But the rule of two is something that a friend of mine taught me, and it's just the fact of having a friend of yours helping you go to a network. And it can be a real network or a virtual network. And the idea of that is that if you find a friend that can help you with that, and if you find a friend that is extrovert and that can help you open doors the way you need, that individual can help you go to the persons you need and identify those. I started doing that with a very good friend of mine. He's Mexican as well. When I was in that SAP stage at the beginning of my transition to Canada, I remember that every single time we were going together to an event, it was amazing because he was talking to some people, I was talking to some other people. And in addition to paying attention to our own interest, we had the interests of the other in mind. So it was common for him to say, hey, Carlos, I just met this guy, I just met this lady. He or she does the same thing you do. So let me make an introduction. And making those connections was very useful in order to make this flow in a more effective way. So having more people to help you more effectively open those networks can be very, very useful.
And from Karen Peraza, hello Karen, great session. And she's been attending many networking events in the last 5 months. And she heard two different insights into different events. Some people say that the network event is better to be selective with the people you interact to and not waste your time trying to speak with everyone. And there are others that advise that it's better to talk as many people as possible. What's just your
That
opinion, Carlos?
that depends on your purpose, and that depends, excuse me, on the sense of urgency you have in the value you expect to get from the network. If you're just in a social mode, just trying to meet people in order to identify new friends, I think that from that perspective, it is good to speak to as many people as you can. Because you never know where you are going to be finding a very good friend that is going to be an important element of your social network. But what happens when it comes to the professional side is different. And I think that when you are looking for a job or looking for an opportunity and you urgently need that to happen, you need to become more selective. And I remember very recently, we were at an ISACA event coincidentally, and I remember a lady from Chile that was attending for the very first time, and I introduced her to a couple of individuals. And that was my advice for her on that specific event for that purpose she was pursuing. I told her, don't waste a lot of time with just one or two individuals because you need to know as many people as you want, as you need, excuse me, in order to help you achieve the objectives you need. So you need to amplify your voice as much as you can in this room. If you spend your time, if you spend the night just with one or two individuals, you will be missing the opportunity of meeting many others. So that's what I said to her. But maybe if it was like a specialized event and there's one or two persons attending that session that you know in advance that are your targets for the exercise you are pursuing, then the advice would have been completely different. And I would have said, go to individual A and B, because those two are the ones you need for this. Don't waste your time with anyone else. That depends on the objective you have in mind, on the goal you have in mind.
From Eduardo Zarate, great presentation, Carlos. He loves the idea of adding value to move some individuals from your professional to your social network and support networks. It's easy to make the mistake of keeping them stale and separate.
Yeah, and I think that we tend to be like nervous or scared on bringing someone closer to our lives. It is complicated because that situation is different for every single person, but we need to find a way to know when to break that boundary. And how is it that you are going to be moving someone from the professional network to the social network or to the support network, because that's the type of individuals you need. But that's, as I said before, the beauty of maintaining these networks.
And from Fariba, she is asking, oh, I misunderstood my question. Okay, she made the connections. She like to know the next step. I don't know what to share or how to continue once she made the connection. I sent
think,
message and left answer unanswered. No response.
yeah, thank you. And Yvette, I will have to apologize because that will be the final question I will be responding to.
Okay,
As incredible
no
as it
problem.
sounds, I need to jump into another meeting in a
No problem.
now.
Thank you.
So what I want to say, Fariba, and you're absolutely right, we need to think that the one interested in pursuing a very specific goal on that network is us, is ourselves. So the ones that are interested on keeping a connection alive is ourselves. I remember when I started, before I started teaching for the University of Toronto, the person that was my initial contact told me, I really want you to be part of this, but I want you to be insistent. I am very sorry, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I am insanely busy. So if you want to be an instructor for the university or with the university, I need you to be insistent. And I did. I was amazingly insistent without being annoying, but I was calling him, emailing him until at some point he said, okay, I got it. You followed my advice. You were insistent. Let's move this forward. In today's world, unfortunately, everyone is very busy. So that's why we need to look for the people we want to talk to. And we need to find a good excuse to talk to them. It may be Thanksgiving. Hey, happy Thanksgiving. How are you? Is everything going well with you? By the way, last time we talked about this. I would love to continue the conversation. Do you have time for another coffee? You are right. There may be people that will not respond. There's nothing we can do in that regard. We can give it a try. We can give it 2 tries, maybe 3 tries. And if they don't respond, we can just leave it there. And we can leave it just to relax and spend some time. And maybe in a month, maybe in a week, we can try again and the response will be different. And if not, we then will conclude that unfortunately that person is not a contact we can count on and we cannot have them as part of our network. But we will find many cases where they will say yes. Every single time I help people, I say, because I remember the advice or the message I got from that individual from the University of Toronto, I say, I am very sorry. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I am insanely busy. So I am very interested in helping you. Just help me help you. I have no issues. If you send me an email or if you send me 10, I don't get offended. Just help me keep you in mind because I have many things in my head and I cannot think of all of them at the same time. So if you just help me keep you in mind, I will definitely find a way to help you on what you want to do. So that's why I think, Fariba, if I am following your question, we need to insist and insist and insist until we decide this is not the contact for me or we get the response we are looking for.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Carlos. Thank you for responding most of our questions. And well, thank you very much. I know you need to run to another meeting. I don't know, you want to say a final words?
Just to say thank you. And I just want to offer the extension of this conversation. I am very sorry that I cannot stay longer, but something we can do is feel free, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. And we can extend the conversation there. Feel free to send an email if you prefer to use the channel. Feel free to go to Twitter or X if you prefer to do that. I will be more than happy to respond. I can take some time to respond, but I promise I respond every single message I get. It can take some time, but I will respond. And thank you so much. And thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Citlali. And thanks to the Hispanotech team for making this happen. I have always thought that you are doing an amazing work, and this is an organization I respect a lot. So thank you for doing this for all of us, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for your words. And to our dear members, thank you, everyone, and have a good night. See you next Tuesday.